A medieval nun saw Jesus hand her his bleeding heart. Another mystic described God as a tiny hazelnut that contained everything ever made. One woman experienced an angel piercing her heart with a golden spear of divine love, leaving her physically aflame. And imagine this, a vision of the universe as a giant, fiery egg holding stars and planets revealed centuries before modern astronomy. These weren't dreams. These were reported as waking realities by women who claimed to have touched the divine. Number 9. Hildegard's fiery cosmic egg that showed her everything. Hildegard of Bingen was a German abbess who lived way back in the 12th century. She wasn't just a nun. She was a writer, a composer, a philosopher, and people even said she was a prophet. From a very young age, like 3 years old, she started seeing things. Not just fuzzy shapes, but vivid, luminous visions, she called the shade of the living light. She said this light didn't blind her, but it showed her incredible things. One of her most mind-blowing visions, which she later wrote down in her book Civius, meaning Know the Ways, was of the entire universe. But it wasn't like any space picture you've ever seen. She saw it as a giant egg, kind of oval, shaped, and totally on fire. Picture this. The outermost layer was a super bright, blazing fire, almost like a skin. But wait, inside this fire, there was another, darker fire that seemed to be breathing or pulsating, spooky right. Peel back that fiery layer in your mind, and next up, Hildegard saw a dark, almost black, empty-looking space. It sounds a bit like deep space, doesn't it? But then, beyond that, there was what she called a pure ether. This was a luminous, bright sphere. And guess what was inside that? Another fiery sphere she called the upper fire, glowing with fiery reds and bright whites. It was like layers upon layers of cosmic fire and light. Inside this upper fire, she described seeing a whitish fire, or a kind of lucid air. And then, within that, another layer of moist air. And it was from this layer that stars seemed to shine out. So the stars weren't just sprinkled randomly. They were part of this amazing, layered structure. At the very, very center of this cosmic egg, Hildegard saw something like a watery or airy core. She explained that this central part represented the elements that keep our Earth going, things like winds, moisture, and the stuff that helps things grow. She also saw the sun, the moon, and all the stars kind of embedded in the firmament, like jewels. And she said they got their light and heat from those upper fiery layers she'd seen. This whole thing wasn't static, like a painting. Hildegard described it as dynamic, with influences and energies moving between all the different layers. It was a living, breathing, cosmic structure. She reported that this vision showed her how everything in the universe was connected, all held together by a divine power. The different layers, she explained, represented different spiritual and physical realities. And those fiery parts, they were all about God's powerful life-giving and sometimes consuming energy. The vision wasn't just a cool picture. It was a map of divine order shown to her in this incredible, fiery, egg-shaped package. And she described all of this centuries before we had telescopes powerful enough to glimpse the vastness of space. Number 8. Julian's tiny hazelnut that held the whole universe. Julian of Norwich, an English mystic from the 14th century, had a series of intense visions when she was super sick and thought she was about to die. We don't even know her real name. Julian comes from the Church of St. Julian in Norwich, where she lived as an anchoress, meaning she was voluntarily walled into a small room attached to the church to dedicate her life to prayer. Imagine that. So, in 1373, when she was about 30 years old, she fell gravely ill. Her curate came to give her the last rites, holding a crucifix before her. As she gazed at it, her sight began to fail, and the room grew dark, except for the image of the cross, which seemed to become supernaturally illuminated. Then, suddenly, she reported seeing Christ's Passion vividly, as if it were happening right in front of her. This was the start of 16 shewings or revelations she received over several hours, and more insights in the days that followed. One of the most famous and honestly cutest visions involved a hazelnut. Yes, a hazelnut. She said that God showed her a little thing, the quantity of a hazelnut, lying in the palm of my hand. It seemed so small and fragile. She wondered how it could even exist. She thought it might suddenly crumble into nothingness because it was so tiny. Then she reported hearing an answer in her understanding. It lasts and ever shall, for God loves it, and so everything has its being by the love of God. Wow! So, this tiny hazelnut, in her vision, represented everything that God ever made. Everything. The whole universe, all of creation, summed up in one little nut. Julian pondered 3 things about this hazelnut. First, that God made it. Second, that God loves it. Third, that God keeps it. She came to understand that these 3 properties applied not just to the hazelnut, but to all of creation. This little vision gave her a massive insight into God's relationship with the world. It wasn't about God being distant and far away, but intimately involved with every tiny part of existence. She also described the hazelnut as being as round as a ball. This simple, everyday object became a profound symbol for her. It showed her the smallness and dependency of creation, but also its preciousness and endurance because of divine love. It wasn't just a philosophical idea. It was something she saw and held, at least in her spiritual perception. This vision became a cornerstone of her later writings, known as Revelations of Divine Love, which is actually the first known book in English written by a woman. From a tiny hazelnut, she unpacked huge ideas about love, existence, and the nature of God, all while stuck in a little room attached to a church. Number 7. Teresa of Avila's heart, piercing angel with a fiery spear. Teresa of Avila was a Spanish Carmelite nun, mystic and reformer who lived in the 16th century. So she's a bit later than some medieval mystics, but her experiences are totally in the same intense spiritual league. She was a powerhouse. She founded new convents, wrote influential books on prayer and spiritual life, and had some of the most dramatic mystical experiences ever recorded. One of her most famous visions, which she described in her autobiography, The Life of Teresa of Jesus, is known as the transverberation. That's a fancy word for a spiritual piercing of the heart. And trust us, her description is anything but dull. Teresa said she saw an angel beside her, on her left side, in bodily form. this was unusual for her. She often experienced visions intellectually or imaginatively, but this angel, she said, was there. She described him as not large but small and very beautiful. His face was so alight that he seemed to be one of the highest types of angels, the ones that look like they are all on fire, perhaps a seraph or cherub. You know, the really intense ones. And what was this fiery little angel holding? A long spear of gold. And at the iron tip, there seemed to be a little fire. Then the angel did something pretty shocking. Teresa reported that he appeared to thrust this fiery spear into her heart several times, and that it seemed to penetrate her very inwards. She said that when he drew it out, it felt like he was drawing her very insides out with it, leaving her all on fire with a great love of God. Now, get this. She said the pain was so real and so intense that it made her moan out loud. But, at the same time, the sweetness of this excessive pain was so incredible that she couldn't possibly wish to be free of it, she wrote. The soul is satisfied now, with nothing less than God. The pain wasn't a nasty, soul-crushing pain. It was a spiritual pain that was also overwhelmingly sweet and blissful. It was a paradox, agony, and ecstasy all mixed together. This experience wasn't just a fleeting moment. Teresa said it left her with a lasting physical and spiritual effect. She felt a profound love for God, and sometimes this intense feeling would return, though not with the same visual manifestation of the angel. She described it as a caress of love, so delightful that she couldn't find words for it. The experience was so central to her spiritual life that it has been depicted countless times in art, most famously by the sculptor Bernini in his Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. Imagine feeling something so powerful. It felt like your very soul was being set on fire by divine love, delivered by an angel with a golden spear. That's some next-level spiritual intensity. Number 6. Catherine of Siena's Mystical Marriage and Invisible Stigmata. Catherine of Siena, who lived in 14th century Italy, was a lay Dominican, not a nun in an enclosed convent, but a tertiary who lived a life of prayer and service in the world. She was a major force, known for her writings, her influence on popes. She even helped persuade Pope Gregory XI to return to Rome from Avignon, and her intense mystical experiences, which started when she was just a little kid. One of her most famous visionary experiences is her mystical marriage to Christ. This reportedly happened when she was around 20 years old in 1367, during the carnival season. While others were out celebrating, Catherine was in her room praying. She had a vision where Christ appeared to her, accompanied by the Virgin Mary, St. John the Evangelist, St. Paul, St. Dominic, the founder of her order, and King David, playing a harp. In this vision, Catherine reported that the Virgin Mary took her hand and held it out to Christ. Christ then placed a ring on her finger, marrying her to himself mystically. Catherine said he told her, "Behold, I wed you to myself, your Creator and Savior. In faith, you will keep this faith ever unspotted until you come to me in heaven to celebrate the everlasting wedding." He also reportedly promised to give her a courageous heart to carry out the tasks he would set for her. Now here's the really interesting part. Catherine said that the ring Christ gave her was not made of gold or silver or jewels, but was a ring of his own flesh, his foreskin to be precise, which was a relic often contemplated in medieval devotion. However, sometimes it was also described as a beautiful gold ring with 4 pearls and a magnificent diamond in the center. Or, and this is key, as a ring that was invisible to everyone but her. For the rest of her life, Catherine said she could always see this ring on her finger, a constant reminder of her mystical union with Christ. Can you imagine seeing a special divine ring on your hand that no one else could see? Another super intense experience, Catherine reported, was receiving the stigmata, the wounds of Christ, but like the ring, for much of the time, these were also invisible for most of her life. This happened in Pisa in 1375, while she was praying before a crucifix after receiving communion. She said she saw 5 blood-red rays shoot out from the wounds on the crucifix and pierce her hands, feet, and side. The pain was so extreme that she fainted. When she came to, she prayed that the wounds, while real for her, would not be outwardly visible, perhaps out of humility or to avoid sensationalism. And so, she said, the wounds remained invisible to others, though she felt the constant pain and effects of them until shortly before her death, when some accounts say they did become visible. Her experiences of intimate union with the divine, symbolized by the ring and the hidden wounds, fueled her incredible energy and courage to speak truth to power, care for the sick, even plague victims, and write deeply influential spiritual text. Number 5. Mechtilde of Magdeburg's dance with the divine in flowing light. Mechtilde of Magdeburg was a 13th century German beguine, a woman who lived a religious life without taking formal vows, and later a nun who wrote an amazing book called The Flowing Light of the Godhead. Her writings are full of poetic, passionate, and sometimes pretty wild descriptions of her encounters with the divine. She wasn't shy about describing God in very human, even romantic terms. Her visions weren't always about specific scenes or objects. Often they were about overwhelming feelings, dialogues, and experiences of being completely absorbed in divine love. She described God's love as a flowing light, a powerful current that swept her away. One of her most beautiful and famous passages describes a kind of divine dance. Imagine this. She speaks in the voice of the soul, addressing God. She talks about being led by God into a dancing school of love. It's not a stuffy, formal dance, but a wild, joyful, intimate one. She wrote things like, "I cannot dance, Lord, unless you lead me. If you want me to leap with abandon, you must intone the song yourself. Then I shall leap into love, from love into knowledge, from knowledge into enjoyment, and from enjoyment beyond all human sensations." This dance isn't just a metaphor for happiness. It's a metaphor for the entire spiritual journey, a dynamic, moving relationship with the divine. She described being whirled and twirled in this dance of love. The imagery is so active and full of energy. It's not about quiet, still contemplation for her, at least not all the time. It's about passionate engagement. Mechtilde also had visions of the soul as a bride in God or Christ as the bridegroom, a common theme in mystical writing, but she described it with such personal intensity. She wrote about the soul being adorned for her divine lover, and the longing and fulfillment of this spiritual union. She used very bold, even erotic language to try and convey the sheer power and intimacy of these experiences. For example, she describes God saying to the soul, "When you go to your lover, what do you take with you? Your bare life only." And the soul replies, "Lord, I bring you my treasure, which is greater than any mountain. I bring you my loving desire." Her visions often involved conversations, not just with God or Christ, but with figures like Lady Love or personified virtues. It was a whole inner world populated by these spiritual entities. She also had some pretty terrifying visions of hell and purgatory, described with equally vivid detail. She wasn't afraid to write about the dark side of spirituality, as well as the blissful side. Her work is like reading a diary of someone who is head over heels in love. But her beloved is the creator of the universe. She tried to capture the unspeakable joy and sometimes the agony of this divine romance, often using the imagery of light flowing water and that incredible energetic dance. Number 4. Hadi Witch of Antwerp's vision of being swallowed by love's abyss. Hadi Witch of Antwerp, who lived in the 13th century, likely in what is now Belgium, was another Bingen. We don't know a ton about her life, but her writings, poems, letters, and descriptions of her visions are some of the most powerful and sophisticated mystical texts from the Middle Ages. She wrote in Middle Dutch, and her work is all about the soul's passionate, often painful, quest for union with God, whom she often called love, min in Dutch. One of her most famous visions is incredibly intense, almost overwhelming to read. She describes being taken up in the Spirit on Pentecost Sunday. She's in a state of deep longing and madness for love. Then, she says, a magnificent youth, Christ came towards her. He gave her his own nature, and she described becoming one with him. But the vision didn't stop there. It got even more cosmic and consuming. She then described seeing a huge, terrifying abyss. She wrote, "Then I sank and was annihilated in the fathomless abyss of his Godhead, which is his and my blessedness." Imagine being completely swallowed up, losing yourself entirely in something vast and infinite. That's what she's describing. It sounds scary, but for Hadewij, this annihilation was also a kind of ultimate fulfillment, a complete union where her individual self dissolved into the divine. In another vision, which she calls her vision of the all, she describes being shown the fullness of love. She saw an eagle, which she understood to be Christ, soaring high. Then she describes an experience of being drawn into this love, in a way that's almost violent in its intensity. She says, "Love came and took possession of all the hells and heavens that are in me, and that are outside of me." Love, for Hadewij, wasn't just a gentle feeling. It was an all-powerful force that could conquer everything, even the hells within her own soul. She uses language that's both beautiful and terrifying. She talks about the madness of love, the storms of love, and the woundses of love. For her, the path to God was not easy or comfortable. It involved suffering, longing, and a willingness to be completely undone by this divine passion. She often felt like she was on a seesaw, sometimes experiencing incredible closeness and joy, other times feeling abandoned and in deep spiritual pain because she felt so far from God. Her visions often emphasized the paradoxical nature of this love. It was both sweet and cruel, joyful and sorrowful. She described wanting to be devoured and annihilated in love. It's a really radical idea, not just to be near God or to serve God, but to be completely consumed by God, to lose oneself entirely. Her writings are a testament to someone who experienced the divine not as a distant concept, but as an overwhelming, all-encompassing reality that demanded everything from her. It's pretty hardcore stuff, even from mystics. Number 3, Bridget of Sweden's hyper-realistic nativity vision that changed art. Saint Bridget of Sweden, who lived in the 14th century, was a noblewoman, a mother of 8, yes 8, and later the founder of the Brigittine order of nuns and monks. After her husband died, she dedicated herself fully to a religious life and began receiving a ton of visions which she dictated to her confessors. These became a hugely popular book called Revelations. Her visions covered everything from political advice for kings and popes to incredibly detailed scenes from the life of Christ and Mary. One of her most influential visions was of the Nativity, the birth of Jesus. And let me tell you, it was way different from the cozy, softly lit manger scenes you might be used to. Bridget's vision was super specific and had some details that artists totally ran with for centuries. She described being spiritually present in Bethlehem. She saw the Virgin Mary, heavily pregnant, kneeling in prayer in a cave or grotto, not a wooden stable in her vision. Joseph was there too, and he left to get a candle, leaving Mary alone. Bridget, said Mary, then took off her shoes, her white cloak, and her veil, her golden hair falling to her shoulders. She was wearing only a simple white tunic. Then, Bridget reported, in an instant, in a flash, Mary gave birth to her son. There was no pain, no mess, just a sudden miraculous birth. And the baby Jesus wasn't just lying there. Bridget saw him radiating an ineffable light and splendor so bright that it completely outshone the sun and Joseph's little candle, which he brought back after the birth. This divine light coming from the baby himself was a huge deal. Mary then adored her newborn son, worshiping him. Bridget described Mary's words and actions with incredible precision. She saw the baby as so clean and pure from any kind of soil and impurity. She also noted something really specific. The umbilical cord was still attached, and Mary didn't cut it. Instead, it just sort of dried up and disappeared on its own super quick. The vision also included details about angels singing, and Joseph returning, and also worshiping the child. But the key takeaways that artists picked up were Mary kneeling in adoration before the naked, radiant baby Jesus lying on the ground, and the overwhelming divine light coming from the child himself, making all other light sources look dim. Before Bridget's vision became popular, nativity scenes often showed Mary lying down, recovering from childbirth, like any normal mother. But after Bridget's revelations spread, art started to change. You began to see more and more paintings of Mary kneeling, the baby on the ground radiating light, and often no visible means of support for him. This specific imagery, directly from Bridget's detailed vision, became super common in Renaissance art and beyond. It's amazing to think that one woman's reported mystical experience could have such a lasting impact on how people visually imagined one of the most important scenes in Christianity for hundreds of years. She didn't just see it. She shaped how everyone else saw it, too. Number 2. Gertrude the Great's Sacred Heart Encounter and Divine Hugs. Saint Gertrude the Great was a 13th-14th century German nun from the monastery of Helfta, which was like a hodspot for female mystics at the time. She was highly educated, a brilliant writer, and from the age of 25 she started having a series of intense, mystical visions that completely changed her life. Her most famous work, The Herald of Divine Love, or Legatus Divinae Pietatis, is packed with these experiences. One of her most significant and influential visions involved what we now call the Sacred Heart of Jesus. This was pretty groundbreaking stuff for her time. She reported that on one occasion during a feast day of St. John the Evangelist, she had a vision where she was allowed to rest her head on Christ's breast right near his heart, just like John the Apostle did at the Last Supper. As she rested there, she said she could hear the beating of Christ's divine heart. Can you imagine? She asked St. John, who appeared with Christ in the vision, why he hadn't written more about the secrets of Christ's heart in his gospel. John reportedly replied that this revelation was reserved for later ages, when the world had grown cold, so that it might be rekindled by hearing about such love. In another vision, even more direct, Christ appeared to Gertrude and invited her to exchange hearts with him. He showed her his own heart, radiant and burning with love, and then, in a mystical exchange, he seemed to take her heart and place his own within her. Or, in some accounts, he opened his own breast and placed her heart alongside his own, uniting them. This was a powerful symbol of an incredibly intimate union with the divine. She described, feeling this divine heart beating within her, filling her with an overwhelming love and sweetness. Gertrude's visions weren't all about grand cosmic scenes. Many were incredibly personal and tender. She described Christ appearing to her frequently, often in very familiar and comforting ways. She wrote about him, giving her divine hugs or spiritual embraces that filled her with immense joy and peace. She even described him playing with her soul in a loving way. It sounds almost childlike, but it was a way of expressing a deep, personal, and affectionate relationship with God. She also reported detailed conversations with Christ, where he would instruct her, console her, or reveal spiritual truths to her. For example, she once felt sad that her sins might prevent her from fully praising God. Christ reportedly appeared and told her that her humble acknowledgement of her unworthiness was actually a beautiful form of praise. These experiences weren't just for her own benefit. Gertrude felt they were given to her to share, to encourage others, and to show the depths of God's love and mercy. Her writings about the Sacred Heart were some of the earliest and most influential, paving the way for later devotions. She presented a God who wasn't just a distant judge, but a tender, loving presence, whose heart literally burned with love for humanity. Imagine feeling that you had Christ's own heart beating inside you. That's the kind of intense Quatchik experience, Gertrude reported. Number 1. Marjorie Kempe's dramatic weeping and intimate chats with Jesus. Marjorie Kempe, a laywoman from 15th century England, wasn't a nun, but she was definitely a mystic, and a controversial one at that. She was a wife, a mother of 14 children. Yes, 14. And later in life, she and her husband agreed to live celibately so she could dedicate herself to a religious life of pilgrimage and devotion. Her story, the Book of Marjorie Kempe, is considered the first autobiography in the English language. And boy, is it a wild ride? Marjorie's mystical experiences were less about grand, symbolic visions of the cosmos, and more about incredibly vivid, personal, and often very loud encounters primarily with Jesus, but also with Mary and other saints. One of the most distinctive features of her spirituality was her gift of tears. When she contemplated Christ's suffering, or sometimes just out of overwhelming love or devotion, she would burst into loud, uncontrollable weeping, sobbing, and even roaring. This didn't just happen in private prayer. It happened in church, in public, on pilgrimages, basically anywhere. As you can imagine, this made a lot of people uncomfortable, or even angry. Some thought she was faking it. Some thought she was ill, and some even accused her of heresy or being possessed. But Marjorie insisted that these outbursts were a genuine gift from God, a sign of her deep compassion and her participation in Christ's suffering. She described these crying fits in detail. This creature oftentimes, when she saw women carry male children in their arms, if she might have her will, she would have run into the street and cry with them for sorrow that her Lord was so despised. Her visions, or rather her intimate conversations and imaginative participation in sacred events, were incredibly detailed and personal. She reported that Jesus would speak to her directly, like a friend or a spouse. He'd call her daughter and give her advice, reassurance, and sometimes even scold her gently. For example, she reported Jesus telling her things like, "Daughter, if you knew how sweet your love is to me, you would not do anything else but love me with all your heart." Or he might tell her what to wear, or where to go on pilgrimage. She didn't just see these events from a distance. She felt like she was in them. When she meditated on the Nativity, she felt she was there, helping Mary. When she contemplated the Passion, she was at the foot of the cross, weeping uncontrollably. She described these experiences as if they were happening in real time. For instance, she imagined herself swaddling the baby Jesus, or trying to comfort Mary during the crucifixion. She had a vision where she was told she was mystically married to the Godhead, and Jesus told her she could boldly take me in the arms of your soul and kiss my mouth, my head, and my feet as sweetly as you will. This was incredibly intimate stuff. Marjorie traveled extensively on pilgrimages to Jerusalem, Rome, Santiago de Compostela, in Spain, and other holy sites. And everywhere she went, her weeping and her very vocal piety attracted attention, both positive and negative. She was arrested several times on suspicion of being a Lollard, a heretical group, but she always managed to defend herself, often by quoting scripture or by the sheer force of her conviction. Her book gives us an amazing, unfiltered glimpse into the life of a medieval woman who believed she had a direct, personal, and very emotional line to the divine, whether people liked it or not. She was unapologetically herself, tears, roars, and all.